Dr. Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 5 years aboard the research vessel Times Endeavour *, but nothing quite like the creature lying broken on the medical bay table. The alien's skin shimmered like liquid silver, and delicate crystalline structures protruded from her skull like a crown of living gemstones. Her breathing was shallow, each exhale releasing tiny sparks of blue light that danced in the sterile air before fading. Found her in an escape pod drifting near the Kepler system, Captain Rodriguez explained, her voice tight with concern. The pod was barely holding together. Whoever attacked her ship did a thorough job. Marcus ran his scanner over the alien's form, frowning at the readings. I'm getting biosignatures I've never seen before. Her cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases. These crystalline formations appear to be integral to her nervous system. The alien stirred slightly, her large violet eyes fluttering open. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak, melodic sound that reminded Marcus of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her gaze found his, and he saw intelligence there, along with pain and something that looked like desperation. Easy, Marcus said softly, instinctively reaching out to touch her forehead. The moment his fingers made contact with her skin, he gasped. A rush of images flooded his mind, starships burning in the void, soldiers in dark armor pursuing, fleeing civilians. And this woman, standing defiantly before a massive throne, rejecting some kind of ultimatum. The connection lasted only seconds before the alien's eyes rolled back, and she lost consciousness again. Marcus stumbled backward, his head spinning from the brief mental link. What just happened? Captain Rodriguez demanded. I think she's royalty of some kind. A princess. And she's running from something terrible. Marcus steadied himself against the medical console. Her people are in danger, Captain. And judging by the condition of that escape pod, whatever's hunting them has superior firepower. Over the next several hours, Marcus worked tirelessly to understand the alien's physiology. Her species, which the computer had designated as unknown crystalline humanoid, possessed a unique dual circulatory system. One carried a luminescent fluid that seemed to function like blood, while the other circulated what appeared to be liquid energy through the crystal formations on her body. The problem was immediately apparent. Several of the crystals on her spine had been shattered, disrupting the energy flow and causing a cascade failure throughout her system. It was like trying to run electricity through broken circuits. Without intervention, she would die within days, as her body's energy systems shut down one by one. The medical database has no protocols for this type of injury, the ship's AI announced. Recommended course of action: stabilize patient and transfer to specialized xenobiology facility. The nearest facility is 3 weeks away, Marcus muttered, studying the scans. She doesn't have 3 weeks. He spent the night researching, cross-referencing every piece of data they had on crystalline structures and bioelectric fields. Human medicine had made incredible advances in the past century, particularly in the field of bioengineering and neural interfaces. The techniques used to repair damaged human neural pathways might be adaptable. The next morning, the alien princess he'd started thinking of her that way was awake but clearly weakening. The blue sparks from her breathing had dimmed to barely visible flickers. When she saw Marcus approach, she tried to sit up, wincing as the movement sent cracks of light through the damaged crystals on her back. Please, don't move, Marcus said gently. I think I know what's wrong, and I believe I can help you. She tilted her head, studying his face with those remarkable violet eyes. Then, she reached out tentatively and touched his hand. Again, images flashed through his mind. But this time, they were clearer. He saw her world, a planet of floating crystal cities, connected by bridges of pure light. He saw her people, tall and graceful, their crystal formations glowing with inner fire, and he saw the invasion. Dark ships blotting out the stars, her people fleeing in terror, but most importantly, he understood her language. The mental connection was teaching him, downloading knowledge directly into his brain. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. You are healer? She asked, the words formed with effort, as her vocal cords adapted to human speech patterns. I'm a doctor. I help people when they're hurt. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. What's your name? I am Lirelei, daughter of the Crystal Throne, guardian of the light ways. Each word seemed to cost her tremendous effort. My people. Are they safe? Forder. Unreal alive. Unreal alive. Unreal alive. Just a them. Are they safe? Marcus hesitated. He had no way of knowing, but he could see the desperate hope in her eyes. Tell me about your injuries first. Then we'll figure out how to help your people, she explained, with the mental connection filling in details her spoken words couldn't convey, that her species' crystal formations were more than just part of their nervous system. They were conduits for a form of energy that connected all her people across vast distances. The Zephyrians, as she called her species, could communicate instantaneously across star systems through their crystal networks. They could share memories, emotions, even life force itself. The attackers, a militant faction called the Dominion, had specifically targeted the crystal formations because they knew it would sever the Zephyrians' greatest strength. Their unity, with their communication network disrupted, her people would be isolated, vulnerable, unable to coordinate their defense. If I can restore even one functioning crystal network, Lirelei whispered, I can re-establish contact with our scattered fleets. But the damage. Marcus studied the scans again with this new understanding. The shattered crystals weren't just causing her physical pain, they were cutting her off from her entire species. She was completely alone in a way that no human could truly comprehend. I have an idea, he said finally. But it's risky. Human neural interface technology might be compatible with your crystal matrix. I could potentially use synthetic neural pathways to bridge the gaps where your crystals are damaged. Lirelei's eyes widened. You would risk your technology, your knowledge, to help someone you barely know? That's what humans do, Marcus replied simply. We help each other. And right now, you're part of my crew's responsibility. The procedure took 12 hours. Marcus had to improvise much of it, using equipment designed for human neurosurgery and adapting it for Lirelei's unique physiology. Captain Rodriguez assisted, along with Chief Engineer Patel, who helped modify the ship's power systems to provide the specific energy frequencies the crystals required. The most challenging part was creating a stable interface between human technology and Zephyrian biology. Marcus found that he had to maintain physical contact with Lirelei throughout much of the procedure, using the mental connection to guide the placement of each synthetic pathway. It was exhausting work, requiring him to essentially think in two different biological languages simultaneously. As the final connection was made, Lirelei's crystal formations suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The medical bay was filled with cascading colors as energy flowed through her restored pathways. She gasped, her back arching as the full power of her heritage returned to her. Then, something unexpected happened. The mental connection between Marcus and Lirelei didn't fade as he'd expected. Instead, it strengthened, becoming a permanent bridge between their minds. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, her overwhelming gratitude and relief as she reconnected with her people across the stars. Through their link, Marcus experienced the moment when Lirelei's consciousness reached out and touched the minds of surviving Zephyrian commanders scattered across a dozen star systems. He felt their joy at discovering their princess alive, their renewed hope as she began coordinating their response to the Dominion threat. It worked, Lirelei breathed, sitting up on the medical table with grace that belied her recent near-death experience. Her crystal formations pulsed with steady, healthy light. Marcus, you have saved not just my life, but my entire species. She stood and faced him, her expressions solemn and intent. Among my people, there is a sacred law. When one saves another's life through great sacrifice and risk, when they forge a connection of mind and spirit that transcends physical boundaries, they become soul-bonded, what humans might call Lifemates. Marcus felt his cheeks flush. I was just doing my job. Helping someone in need. No, Lirelei said firmly, stepping closer. You chose to risk everything for someone you'd never met. From a species you'd never encountered. You opened your mind to mine, shared your knowledge and your strength. In doing so, you have claimed a place in my heart and my soul that no other can fill. The mental connection pulsed between them, and Marcus could feel the depth of her emotion, the sincerity of her declaration. It wasn't just gratitude or some alien custom, it was something profound and real, a bond that had been forged in the crucible of crisis and healing. Lirelei, he began, uncertain how to respond. She placed a hand on his cheek, and through their connection, he felt her understanding of his confusion, his human need to process this overwhelming development. I do not ask for an answer now, she said gently. But know this, Marcus Chen, you have my heart, and my people owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. Whatever comes next, you will always have a place among the Zephyrians, should you choose to claim it. As if summoned by her words, the ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. Doctor. Talk. Well. Doctor. Chen, Princess Lirelei, you need to see this. We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. It looks like your people are mobilizing for a counterattack, and they're asking specifically for our help. Marcus looked into Lirelei's glowing eyes and saw his future reflecting back at him, a future that would take him far beyond the safe boundaries of human space, into a conflict that would determine the fate of an entire civilization. The simple act of healing an injured stranger had somehow entangled him in the destiny of two species. And as the Endeavor Times prepared to change course toward the Zephyrian fleet rendezvous coordinates, Marcus realized that his life as a quiet research ship doctor had just come to an end. Whatever lay ahead would test not just his medical skills, but his courage, his loyalty, and this strange new bond that connected his heart to that of an alien princess. The Zephyrian fleet was a sight that would haunt Marcus's dreams for years to come. Hundreds of crystal ships hung in the void like living jewels, their translucent hulls pulsing with the same inner light he'd seen in Lirelei's formations. The largest vessel, the flagship times Starweaver Asterisk, was easily 3 times the size of any human dreadnought, its hull shaped like a massive crystalline flower with petals that could open to reveal devastating energy weapons. Your technology is remarkable, Captain Rodriguez whispered as they approached the flagship in a Zephyrian shuttle. I've never seen ships that generate their own gravitational fields. Lirelei smiled at the compliment, her hand resting lightly on Marcus's arm. The constant mental connection between them had become natural over the past 3 days of travel, like having a second voice in his head that belonged to someone who understood him completely. Our ships are grown, not built, she explained. Each vessel is cultivated from crystal seeds over decades, shaped by the will and intent of its future crew. They are as much alive as any Zephyrian. The docking bay of the Starweaver Times was unlike anything in human experience. Instead of mechanical clamps and airlocks, tendrils of living crystal extended from the ship's hull to embrace their shuttle, forming a perfect seal and gently drawing them inside. The bay itself was a cathedral of light, with walls that sang in harmonic frequencies as they moved. Waiting for them was an honor guard of Zephyrian warriors, their crystal formations shaped into elaborate armor that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. At their head stood a figure who could only be royalty tall even by Zephyrian standards, with crystal formations that formed an intricate crown of living light. Father, Lirelei said, her voice thick with emotion as she stepped forward. King Valdris of the Crystal Throne was an imposing figure, his presence radiating authority and barely contained power. His violet eyes, so similar to his daughter's, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made the human doctor feel like he was being examined at the molecular level. So, the king said, his mental voice reaching Marcus through Lirelei's connection. This is the human who saved my daughter's life and claimed her heart in the process. Marcus straightened his shoulders, meeting the alien king's gaze directly. King Valdris studied him for a long moment, then surprised everyone by laughing, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Spoken like a true healer. You show no fear, human. Either you are very brave or very foolish. Probably both, sir, Marcus admitted. This drew another laugh from the king. I like honesty. Very well, Dr. Marcus Chen. You have earned the right to stand before the crystal throne. Come, let me show you what we face. The command center of the Times Starweaver Times was a sphere of pure crystal suspended in the heart of the ship. As they entered, the walls came alive with three-dimensional displays showing the current state of the war. Red markers indicated Dominion forces, while blue showed Zephyrian positions. The tactical situation was grim. The Dominion has occupied 7 of our 12 homeworlds, King Valdris explained, gesturing to the display. Their strategy is simple but effective. They target our crystal formations first, severing our ability to coordinate. Without our mental networks, each world falls in isolation. General Kithara, the fleet's military commander, pointed to a cluster of red markers. Their main battle fleet is here, at Zephyros Prime, our capital world. They hold 3 million of our people hostage, using them as living shields around their installations. Marcus studied the tactical display, his medical training giving him a unique perspective on the strategic problem. It's like a cancer, he said slowly. They're not trying to destroy you outright. They're trying to disrupt your immune system, so you can't fight back effectively. An apt comparison, King Valdris said approvingly. And just as cancer requires targeted treatment rather than broad destruction, so too must our response be precise. Lirelei stepped forward, her crystal formations glowing brighter. Father, I have a proposal. The mental link I share with Marcus has given me insight into human tactical thinking. Their species has fought countless wars against overwhelming odds and found victory through innovation and courage. Perhaps it is time to learn from their methods. The king's expression grew thoughtful. You suggest we adopt human military tactics? Not adopt, Marcus interjected, understanding immediately what Lirelei was thinking through their connection. Adapt. Your people have capabilities. Humans can only dream of instantaneous communication, shared consciousness, energy manipulation, on a massive scale. But you've been thinking defensively, trying to preserve what you have instead of leveraging your unique advantages. General Kithara's crystal formations flickered with skepticism. Their ships are built for war, while ours are crafted for beauty and harmony. But their ships are just machines, Marcus countered. Yours are alive. They can adapt, evolve, respond to threats in ways no purely mechanical vessel could match. He turned to the tactical display, his mind racing. What if instead of meeting them in direct combat, you used your ship's living nature to implement guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, using your crystal communication network to coordinate simultaneous strikes across multiple systems? The room fell silent as the Zephyrian leaders considered this. Through his link with Lirelei, Marcus could feel the rapid exchange of thoughts between her and her father. A conversation conducted at the speed of light through their crystal matrix. Finally, King Valdris spoke. It is a sound strategy, but it requires something. We have lost the ability to coordinate across our scattered forces. The Dominion's first strikes specifically targeted our primary communication crystals. Then we rebuild the network, Marcus said firmly. The technique I used to heal Lirelei can be scaled up. Human neural interface technology could serve as a bridge between damaged crystal formations, creating redundant pathways that would be much harder for the Dominion to sever. Lirelei's eyes lit up with excitement. Marcus, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? A hybrid network, he confirmed. Zephyrian crystal consciousness, linked through human technology. It would give you backup communication systems they can't predict or easily counter. General Kithara leaned forward, her skepticism giving way to interest. How long would such a system take to implement? That depends on how many volunteers you have, Marcus replied. The process requires a human technician to interface directly with each crystal matrix. It's not dangerous, but it is intensive. Volunteers, King Valdris repeated thoughtfully. You speak as though other humans would willingly risk themselves for our cause. Captain Rodriguez, who had been quietly observing the discussion, stepped forward. Your Majesty, when Dr. Chen sent word back to Earth Command about your situation, the response was immediate. The Terran Federation has dispatched a task force, 300 ships carrying our best engineers, medical personnel, and military advisors. Humanity doesn't abandon its friends. The King's crystal formations pulsed with surprise, and something that Marcus recognized as deep emotion. Your people would risk war with the Dominion for the sake of strangers? That's what humans do. Captain Rodriguez said simply. We stand up to bullies. Quote, over the next week, the Times Endeavor Times became the center of the most ambitious technological collaboration in galactic history. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian crystal shapers to develop new hybrid communication nodes. Each installation required a human technician to create neural bridges between the organic crystal matrix and synthetic pathways, allowing for redundant communication channels that the Dominion couldn't easily detect or disable. Marcus found himself working 18-hour days, training other human volunteers in the delicate process of crystal matrix repair. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. Each successful connection strengthened the growing hybrid network and brought hope back to the scattered Zephyrian forces. But it was during the quiet moments, when he and Lirale worked together on the most complex installations, that Marcus truly began to understand what their bond meant. The mental connection had evolved beyond simple communication into something deeper, a sharing of purpose and understanding that transcended species barriers. In our oldest legends, Lirale told him as they calibrated a particularly intricate crystal array, there are stories of the first bonding when our ancestors learned to share consciousness with the living crystals themselves. The legends say that such partnerships create something greater than the sum of their parts. Marcus paused in his work, looking at her thoughtfully. Are you saying we're like your ancestors and the crystals? I am saying that perhaps the universe brought us together for a reason, she replied, her crystal formations glowing softly in the dim light of the engineering bay. Your mind and mine, human ingenuity and Zephyrian harmony, together we have created something neither species could achieve alone. Their moment was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. General Kithara's voice echoed through the crystal network. All stations. This is Fleet Command. Long-range sensors detect a Dominion strike force approaching the Kepler system. They've discovered our base of operations. Estimated time to arrival: 6 hours. Marcus and Lirale exchanged a look of determination. The hybrid network was only half complete, but they were about to face their first real test. The Dominion was coming, and everything they had worked for hung in the balance. Signal the human task force, Lirale commanded through the crystal network. Tell them, it's time to see if this alliance can fight as well as it can build. As alarm signals pulsed through the ship's living crystal hull, Marcus realized that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Zephyrian people, but the future of human-alien cooperation throughout the galaxy. The hybrid network they had built was about to face its trial by fire, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their success or failure would echo across the stars for generations to come. The battle for Zephyros Prime was about to begin, and Marcus found himself at the center of it all, a human doctor whose simple act of healing had somehow made him a key figure in an interstellar war. Through his bond with Lirale, he could feel her absolute faith in him, in their partnership, in the strength of the alliance they had helped forge. It was time to prove that love and cooperation could triumph over conquest and tyranny, even among the stars. The Battle of Kepler Station became the stuff of legends, though Marcus experienced it as a terrifying blur of light, energy, and desperate coordination through the hybrid crystal network. The Dominion strike force emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. 200 warships bristling with weapons, designed specifically to shatter crystal formations and sever the psychic bonds that held Zephyrian society together. But they had not expected to face an enemy that had learned to think like humans while retaining all their natural advantages. Network synchronization at 97%, reported Chief Engineer Patel from his station aboard the Times Endeavor *. All human Zephyrian interface nodes are online and stable. Marcus stood in the command center of the Times Starweaver *, his hands pressed against a massive crystal interface that connected him directly to the fleet's consciousness. Through the hybrid network, he could feel the thoughts and emotions of thousands of beings, human determination mixing with Zephyrian harmony, creating a symphony of coordinated purpose he had never imagined possible. Phase 1 is a go, Lirelei announced, her voice carrying through both spoken words and the crystal network. All units, implement the Terran Swarm Protocol. What happened next defied every conventional understanding of space warfare. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, the combined human Zephyrian fleet dispersed into hundreds of small groups, each moving in seemingly random patterns that appeared chaotic to outside observers, but were actually part of a precisely coordinated dance. The Dominion fleet, expecting either a desperate last stand or a disorganized retreat, found themselves facing an enemy that struck from everywhere at once. Zephyrian crystal ships, guided by human tactical doctrine, appeared out of nowhere to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing back into the void. Human vessels, their crews linked into the crystal network, fought with a coordination and precision that left Dominion commanders struggling to understand what they were facing. Target the crystal formations, Admiral Corvex of the Dominion fleet commanded, his deep voice crackling across their communications. Sever their network, and they'll fall apart like leaves in the wind. But the hybrid network proved far more resilient than the Dominion expected. When crystal nodes were damaged, human neural interfaces automatically rerouted communications through backup pathways. When human ships were targeted, Zephyrian vessels shared their energy shields across species lines, creating protective barriers that no single fleet could have generated. Marcus felt every hit the fleet took, every victory and setback, through his connection to the network. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time he was experiencing warfare as a living organism rather than individual ships trading fire. Dominion flagship is breaking formation, Captain Rodriguez reported from the Times Endeavour *. They're trying to retreat to hyperspace. Not today, Lirelei said grimly. Through the network, Marcus felt her determination crystallize into action. All crystal ships, implement Starweaver Protocol. Show them what happens when you threaten our families. The Zephyrian vessels suddenly changed, their crystalline hulls flowing like liquid as they transformed from elegant exploration ships into something far more dangerous. Weapons that had been hidden within their living matrix emerged like thorns on a rose, and their previously beautiful forms became predatory and fierce. The Times Starweaver Times itself grew massive energy projectors that looked like crystalline wings, each one capable of channeling the combined power of the entire fleet. When they fired, the beams didn't just destroy enemy ships, they passed harmlessly through human vessels, while selectively targeting Dominion technology, guided by the hybrid network's ability to distinguish friend from foe at the quantum level. The battle was over in less than 3 hours. The Dominion strike force, built to overwhelm isolated opponents through superior firepower, found themselves completely outmatched by an enemy that fought as a single, coordinated organism spanning 2 species and hundreds of ships. But victory in the Kepler system was only the beginning. The real test comes at Zephyros Prime, King Valdris said during the strategy session that followed their triumph. The Dominion has had months to fortify their positions, and they hold 3 million of our people as hostages. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing their target, the Zephyrian homeworld, surrounded by massive Dominion battle stations and defensive platforms. A direct assault would result in massive civilian casualties. We need something more surgical. I agree, Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Task Force said. She was no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, but she had quickly proven herself a brilliant strategic mind. However, surgical requires intelligence. We need to know exactly where the hostages are being held and how the Dominion defensive grid operates. Lirelei's crystal formations pulsed thoughtfully. There may be a way. If we could get close enough to the planet's crystal network, I might be able to establish contact with survivors on the surface, but it would require someone to penetrate their defensive perimeter. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately, reading her intentions through their bond. You're talking about a suicide mission. Not suicide, she corrected gently. Sacrifice, if necessary. My people need hope, Marcus. They need to know that their princess has not abandoned them. The debate that followed was intense, involving military leaders from both species and lasting well into the night. In the end, it was Marcus himself who proposed the solution that would define the final battle of the war. What if it's not a suicide mission, he suggested. What if it's a rescue mission that looks like a medical emergency? The plan they developed was audacious in its simplicity. Marcus would pilot a clearly marked medical vessel directly toward Zephyros Prime, broadcasting on all frequencies that he was delivering critical medical supplies to Dominion-held civilian populations. According to the Galactic Medical Accords, such missions were to be given safe passage even during active warfare. Hidden within his medical supplies would be a new type of crystal matrix, one that could interface directly with the planet's natural crystal network and establish contact with Zephyrian survivors. Lirale would maintain a mental link with Marcus throughout the mission, allowing her to communicate with her people through his proximity to the planetary network. The risk is enormous, Admiral Chen pointed out. If the Dominion doesn't respect medical neutrality, or if they discover what you're really carrying, then I'll be just another casualty of war, Marcus said quietly. But if we succeed, we'll have real-time intelligence on Dominion positions, and direct communication with the resistance movement on the planet. Lirale took his hand, her crystal formations glowing with worry and determination. I cannot ask this of you, Marcus. You have already done more for my people than anyone could expect. You're not asking, he replied, squeezing her fingers. I'm volunteering. Besides, someone has to deliver those medical supplies. Might as well be the doctor who started this whole thing. The flight to Zephyros Prime took 16 hours, during which Marcus maintained constant contact with Lirale through their mental bond. He could feel her presence like a warm light in his mind, providing comfort and strength as he approached what could very well be his death. The Dominion fleet challenged him 3 times during his approach, each time more aggressively than the last. But his credentials as a neutral medical officer, combined with the genuine medical supplies in his cargo hold, gave him safe passage through their defensive grid. Zephyros Prime was a heartbreaking sight. Once a jewel of crystal cities floating among the clouds, it was now a scarred world, dominated by massive Dominion military installations. The beautiful crystal spires had been shattered or turned into prison facilities, and the planet's natural glow had dimmed to a sickly pallor. Marcus landed at the designated medical facility in the capital city, his heart pounding as Dominion soldiers inspected his cargo. Hidden among the legitimate medical supplies, the special crystal matrix remained undetected to their scanners. It appeared to be nothing more than an advanced medical monitoring device. The moment he activated the hidden matrix, Marcus felt the sleeping consciousness of Zephyros Prime awaken. Through his bond with Lirale, he suddenly had access to thousands of minds, Zephyrian civilians who had been cut off from their people for months, living in fear and isolation under Dominion occupation. But he also discovered something else. A resistance movement that had been quietly growing in the shadows, led by survivors who had learned to mask their crystal formations and move unseen through the occupying forces. Princess Lirale lives, Marcus whispered to a group of resistance fighters who had approached him at the medical facility. She leads a great fleet, and humanity fights beside us. The liberation of Zephyros Prime begins today. 7. Arwis. Marcus. The information flowed both ways through the crystal network. While Marcus shared news of the approaching Allied fleet, the Resistance provided detailed intelligence on Dominion positions, the locations of civilian internment camps, and the weak points in their defensive grid. Most importantly, they revealed that the Dominion was preparing for a final, terrible solution to the Zephyrian problem, a planet-killing weapon designed to shatter the world's crystal core and eliminate all life on Zephyros Prime. We have perhaps 6 hours before they complete their preparations. The Resistance leader, an elderly Zephyrian named Corvain, explained through the crystal link. After that, they will execute all civilians and destroy the planet rather than lose it. Marcus felt Liralay's horror and determination through their bond, as this information reached the fleet. The timeline had just accelerated dramatically. They couldn't wait for perfect conditions or complete preparations. The assault on Zephyros Prime had to begin immediately. All ships. This is Princess Liralay. Her voice carried through the hybrid network to every human and Zephyrian vessel in the fleet. Our people face extinction. Today we prove that love is stronger than hate, that cooperation defeats conquest, and that the bonds between souls cannot be broken by any force in the universe. Today we bring our families home. The final battle began with Marcus still on the planet's surface, coordinating between the resistance movement and the approaching fleet. Through the crystal network, he could feel the massive Allied armada dropping out of hyperspace, over 1,000 ships, representing the combined might of two species united in common cause. But the Dominion wasn't going to surrender easily. As the Allied fleet engaged their defensive platforms, the occupation forces on the planet began executing their final contingency plan. The planet killer weapon powered up, its energy readings climbing toward the critical threshold that would crack the world's crystal core. Marcus. Liralay's voice reached him through their bond, tinged with desperate urgency. The weapon is heavily shielded. We can't penetrate it from orbit. Someone has to disable it from the inside. Marcus looked at the resistance fighters around him, brave Zephyrians who had already sacrificed so much for their people's freedom. He thought of Liralay, waiting in space above, linked to his thoughts and sharing his emotions. He thought of the 3 million civilians whose lives hung in the balance. Corvain, he said to the resistance leader, I need you to get me inside that facility. What followed was the most harrowing hour of Marcus's life. Fighting alongside Zephyrian resistance fighters through the corridors of the Dominion weapon complex, he began to understand why humans had developed such a reputation for stubborn courage throughout the galaxy. When faced with impossible odds, when the fate of innocence hung in the balance, humans simply refused to quit. The weapons control center was a massive chamber filled with humming machinery and holographic displays showing the charging sequence. Dominion technicians worked frantically at their consoles, trying to complete the firing process before the Allied fleet could break through their defenses. Marcus and the resistance fighters fought their way to the central control matrix, where the human doctor found himself facing technology far beyond his understanding. But through his link with Liralay, he had access to Zephyrian knowledge of crystal technology and energy manipulation. Working with desperate efficiency, Marcus began systematically overloading the weapon's power grid, using his medical knowledge of energy flow and Liralay's understanding of crystal matrices to create cascading failures throughout the system. Dominion soldiers poured into the chamber, but the resistance fighters held them back with a courage that would have made their ancestors proud. In the final moments, as the weapon's self-destruct sequence activated and the facility began to collapse around them, Marcus felt Liralay's love flowing through their mental bond, a warmth that transcended physical distance and gave him the strength to complete his mission. The planet killer's destruction marked the turning point of the battle. With their ultimate weapon gone, and their defensive grid failing under the coordinated assault of the hybrid fleet, the Dominion forces began surrendering en masse. Marcus was pulled from the wreckage of the facility by Zephyrian rescue teams, battered and exhausted, but alive. As he was carried to safety, he could feel through the crystal network the joy and relief of 3 million civilians, as their internment camps were liberated and their world was finally free. The reunion with Liralay took place in the great crystal plaza of the capital city, now restored to its former glory and filled with celebrating crowds from both species. When she took him in her arms, their mental bond flared with an intensity that lit up every crystal formation for kilometers around. You did it, she whispered against his ear. You saved my world, my people, our future. We did it, Marcus corrected softly. Humans and Zephyrians together. Just like everything else we'll do from now on. King Valdris approached them, his crystal crown gleaming in the restored light of his homeworld. Dr. Marcus Chen, he said formally, by the ancient laws of our people, and the bonds you have forged with my daughter, I name you Prince Consort of the Crystal Throne, Guardian of the Light Ways, and Bridge between the stars. The crowd erupted in celebration, and Marcus found himself overwhelmed by the cheers of millions of beings from two species. But through it all, he felt only the steady warmth of Liralay's presence in his mind, the certainty of their bond, and the promise of a future where love and cooperation would always triumph over fear and conquest. Years later, when historians would write about the war that united two species and changed the course of galactic civilization, they would focus on great fleet movements, technological innovations, and political alliances. But Marcus knew the real story was simpler and more profound. It was about a doctor who chose to heal rather than abandon, a princess who chose love over safety, and two species who discovered that the strongest bonds were forged not in conquest, but in mutual sacrifice and understanding. The hybrid crystal network they had created during the war became the foundation for a new kind of civilization, one where human ingenuity and Zephyrian wisdom combined to solve problems neither species could have tackled alone. Trade, exploration, cultural exchange, and scientific advancement flourished under the guidance of leaders who understood that diversity was strength. And at the heart of it all was the bond between Marcus and Liralay, a living symbol of what was possible when different worlds chose to reach toward each other instead of turning away. Their love story became legend, told in human schools and Zephyrian crystal gardens alike, a reminder that the greatest adventures begin not with grand plans, but with simple acts of kindness toward strangers in need. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but Marcus had learned that the most precious treasures were the connections forged between souls across the infinite darkness, linking hearts and minds in bonds that no force could ever break. He had healed an alien princess and gained a cosmic love story that would echo through the stars for all eternity.